For over a century, global power was dictated by exactly one liquid resource: crude oil. The absolute superpowers of the 20th century were quite literally built on top of oil fields and pipelines. But today, well, there's a quiet, monumental shift underway. We are rapidly transitioning to a brand new energy paradigm, and the rules of global dominance are being rewritten right from scratch. So welcome to this explainer. Today, we're decoding the critical minerals Cold War and looking at exactly how the foundations of power are shifting right beneath our feet. All right, let's just dive right in. While the West spent decades consolidating their 20th century fossil fuel networks, basically doubling down on crude oil and pipelines, one nation quietly made a completely different, highly calculated bet. China bet on the electron. They recognized incredibly early on that the future wouldn't be powered by combustion, but by electrical currents flowing through specialized hardware. And by making that strategic pivot, China has effectively built the world's very first electrostate. So what exactly does that mean? Well, to be an electrostate is to hold immense leverage over the entire manufacturing chain of the green transition. And we're not just talking about the batteries powering your EV here. We're talking about high-performance components inside wind turbines, advanced telecommunications, and even cutting-edge military hardware. All of it, the whole shebang, relies on a handful of critical minerals, and Beijing has methodically achieved near total dominance over them. Which brings us to Section 1, Beyond the Raw Mines. Because to really understand this geopolitical chess match, we first have to dismantle a very common misconception. There is this persistent myth that the 21st century mineral war is won simply by owning the dirt, by owning the mines. But look at this number, 70%. That's massive. The Democratic Republic of Congo alone produces over 70% of the global cobalt supply. Over in South America, they've got the vast lithium triangle. But here's the absolutely crucial reality. Extracting the rock doesn't actually give you finished high-tech components. Mining, that's literally just step one. The true geostrategic prize doesn't lie in the dirt. It lies in the midstream. And when we talk about the midstream, we mean processing, refining, and manufacturing. The sheer scale of the monopoly here is just staggering. According to data straight from the International Energy Agency, China accounts for a massive 80% of the world's rare earth refining capacity. The rest of the entire globe combined handles just 20%. Across 19 of the 20 strategic minerals tracked globally, China leads in refining. They literally take raw ore from places like the Congo, ship it across the ocean, and process it in highly specialized facilities. And that bottleneck gets even tighter. We're looking at 90% dominance in global permanent magnet production. And these definitely aren't novelty magnets for your refrigerator. These are incredibly capital-intensive components made from heavy rare earths, with names like dysprosium and terbium. So why does this 90% matter to you? Because these specific magnets are absolutely essential for EV motors, advanced wind turbine generators, and critically, the guidance systems in defense hardware. We're talking precision-guided missiles and F-35 stealth fighter jets. Because of this massive concentration of processing power, Western high-tech industries are left completely exposed. The West currently lacks the domestic processing equipment required to refine these minerals at scale. They're missing the highly specialized metallurgical knowledge that's been cultivated in China over decades. Just to put this vulnerability into perspective, the United States right now produces less than a quarter of its own refined rare earths demand. This structural lack of capacity means the technological future of the West is heavily dependent on Beijing. All right, moving on to Section 2, the Export Control Ultimatum. You see, this massive systemic dependency isn't just some theoretical vulnerability on a spreadsheet anymore. It has officially been weaponized into an active diplomatic threat. Back in late 2025, Beijing rolled out a strict, comprehensive export control regime on rare earth elements. This sent absolute shockwaves through global technology sectors, proving that China is fully prepared to restrict access to both raw minerals and critical processing technology. Now, today, those restrictions are temporarily suspended for trade negotiations, but there is a literal ticking clock hanging over Western policymakers. November 10, 2026. That is the hard deadline for this suspension to end. It's truly a strategic sword of Damocles. Think about it. If negotiations stall, or if geopolitical tensions flare over hotspots like the South China Sea, Beijing can simply close the valve. Halting the export of heavy rare earths could bring vast segments of the Western automotive, renewable energy, and aerospace industries to a grinding halt in a matter of weeks. The brutal lesson here is crystal clear. Throwing billions of dollars at domestic Western mines is entirely pointless if the capability to refine those materials remains locked inside China. So you might be wondering, why can't the West just build their own refineries? Let's get into Section 3, the infrastructure debt trap. To understand why dismantling this monopoly will take decades, we really have to look toward Africa. Chinese banks and state-backed engineering firms have executed a highly sophisticated three-step playbook over the last 20 years. Step 1. Long before a single gram of mineral is extracted, they secure the host nation's infrastructure, building railways, roads, and deep-water ports. Step 2. They pair that infrastructure with direct ownership of the actual cobalt and copper mines. And Step 3, they finance these massive projects through state-backed loans. This creates an integrated system where raw materials move exclusively on Chinese terms, completely tying developing economies into a cycle of structural dependency. This leads to a fascinating contrast in economic models. The Chinese state-directed model can intentionally absorb short-term financial losses to maintain long-term strategic control. If mineral prices crash, well, state-backed firms keep the mines running anyway. Meanwhile, Western private companies are driven strictly by short-term market profits and shareholder returns. During economic downturns, they simply cannot compete. Private companies literally cannot afford to hold on to unprofitable mines just for the sake of national strategic control, a luxury the state-directed model actively relies on. But this existential threat has finally triggered a massive, coordinated response. Section 4, the Allied counterstrike. The Western alliance is now scrambling to launch a counter-offensive to break this stranglehold. Enter the Quad Critical Minerals Initiative. This is a landmark pact announced in New Delhi, bringing together the US, India, Australia, and Japan. And they are committing a massive war chest, up to $20 billion in public and private investment. The explicit goal here? To fund alternative mining, midstream processing, and recycling projects across friendly nations. They're desperately trying to build a completely independent, parallel supply chain right from the ground up. And the momentum is accelerating rapidly. Just look at July 3, 2026. Beyond the broader Quad agreement, New Delhi and Tokyo went a step further, signing a highly strategic bilateral critical minerals partnership. This isn't just about sharing research, folks. It is aimed directly at countering what they view as Chinese economic weaponization. They are solidifying a direct supply chain link between India's emerging industrial base and Japan's high-tech manufacturing sector. Now, of course, Beijing is acutely aware of the threat this poses. Their response was immediate and sharp. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun issued a statement warning against the creation of exclusive blocs and polarization under the pretext of cooperation. It's clear Beijing recognizes the stakes. If the Quad actually succeeds in reshoring the midstream refining process, China will lose its absolute most potent tool of economic coercion. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway for today. The geopolitics of the pipeline and the oil well defined our past, but that era is closing. The 21st century firmly, undeniably, belongs to the nation that controls the flow of electrons. The raw ore is important for sure, but the true foundation of global power now rests on the ability to refine those minerals, fabricate the high-performance permanent magnets, and actually manufacture the components that make the modern world turn. So I want to leave you with a drop-the-mic question to think about. We've got a $20 billion allied initiative going up against a 2-decade, globally entrenched, state-backed infrastructure network. Can the Western alliance realistically break this monopoly with their capital, or has Beijing already secured a permanent, insurmountable head start in the 21st century energy war? I really want you to actively think about the stakes of this geopolitical chess match. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.